Hey guys, just want to make a quick video on what I got going on right now and a little bit of an update on the engine once we walk over there to show what we have going on with this. So this is a square bore, the spread bore adapter plate for a carburetor. Thing is, this is to go from a spread bore intake, because this is the factory drilled holes that you drop those screws into and bolt onto the intake. So this is a spread bore, the square bore adapter. I need basically the reverse of that. I need square bore, the spread bore. So rather than returning this, because I do like this resin insert for the opening, it comes with a 4-barrel that flips around and is also fits the quadrojet. It also comes with one that's basically just completely open. So rather than returning it and getting the proper part, which is a few days out, I can't find one locally. I picked this up at AutoZone for like 35 bucks. I'm just modifying it. Got the little Harbor Freight drill press on my messy as hell workbench, whatever. We drilled out the square bore holes because there were threads in there. Drilled those out to where this just slid through. Found a drill bit that fit the head, and now we can drop our screws in there to bolt to the square bore on the intake. And then my plan for getting it to attach to the carburetor is I'm going to need some longer bolts anyway. But I'm either going to print an insert to make a nut here for the bolts, or I might drill it out big enough to fit a nut if possible. I haven't decided yet. We're going to explore some options. I'm going to try the 3D printing inserts first because I have a PETG that shouldn't care too much about the temperature of the engine bay, especially on top of the intake. Should be fine. But we'll go over to the engine real quick. So here's the engine. Got off the assembly stand, got it on a storage stand that I'm also going to be using as a run stand. Hopefully it doesn't, I don't think it's going to twist that apart or anything, but got our intake, Edelbrock reformer. I think the number's on the bottom, but bunch of clear coat on this, so hopefully it stays that nice new aluminum color. Got an adjustable water neck here, just loosen the tool bolts and this will rotate. Pretty nice. But yeah, so basically this will sit on here. It also has its own 4-barrel gasket, so I can keep all 4 of these separated. Then I also printed a 4 separate butterfly hole carburetor to intake base gasket out of PETG. Don't know how well it's going to seal up. I might have to spray it with some copper tone or something to help it seal. We got valve covers on, nice tall valve covers. I am missing one of my T-nuts. I'm planning on getting new ones to get rid of the chrome and go with either red or blue. I'm not sure yet. I do think it looks pretty good having just this little bit of red on the valve cover while everything else is getting blue. Got my pulley almost painted. Water pumps on, obviously. But yeah, it's all coming along. Got ARP bolts on the intake. Got our oil pump primer sitting in there. More or less keeping it sealed up. I do usually have something covering that, but took it off for the video. So that's as far as I am on that. I'll make another clip to add to it as long as there's something to actually make. I just figured this was interesting enough to make a video on. Alright, so here's our update. I did go with 3D printing some threaded inserts using 5/16 by 18 threads. They're actually modeled into the file, so the threads are printed. Got some JB weld on those inserts. Gonna let that set up for full 24 hours before I go putting the studs on. I also got some blue RTV and just put some along all the edges of this insert that the adapter came with, just to make sure it stays in there and doesn't maybe leak around the edges, which I don't think it would. But so this would be the bottom, so this would be our intake side. We'll get the paper or whatever material gasket there, and then it'll be sitting like that. Then I printed this base gasket. It will also get coated in a light coat of that same blue RTV to help it seal up. I actually sketched this myself. A little bit of JB weld on my desk. Anyway, sketched this myself in Fusion 360. Took the one of the old gaskets, which is also a very rigid material, so I don't think it's going to be too much of a deal that this is a hard plastic. Took this, scanned it on the printer using one of these washers to scale. Was able to scale up the image and then just trace it. And then obviously kept all 4 of the butterflies separated. And that'll sit on here, and then a carburetor will sit on top of that. Last thing to go on will be the nuts on top of these studs, because I'm going to have these sitting in those inserts that we printed. That way the gasket can sit on, and then the carburetor comes on top of that. And that allows us to still have the gasket and everything off, but the stud's still on, and drop our screws down into our intake manifold. We'll get a video of that once it's all together, but that will have to wait till tomorrow because I don't want to screw up this JB weld. Alright, so here's what we got going on. Here's our intake with the whole engine. So this gasket will go on here, and then our adapter plate with our studs inserted into our plastic inserts. That'll sit there, and then these 4 screws drop down into these holes, and those will stay recessed out of the way. And from there, our spacer plate will go on, our base gasket, and then the carburetor. Alright, here we are with our first gasket and then our block. I'll put RTV on both sides of this, just a real thin bead. You can still see we still have a good amount of squish out all around. Does not take a lot. I also originally put this on backwards, so I'd immediately take it off and flip it around. So that's why we see a bit in here. We'll clean that up. But, yep, there we are with just the first gasket in the plate. Next goes base gasket for the carb. Alright, there it is. Got everything on. Like I said, originally a little bit RTV on both sides of this to help it seal up. Looks like it did. Got a little bit of squish out everywhere. You can also see a little bit of squish out through the secondaries. Nothing interfering with the butterflies. And given how long this is going to sit before it's firing again, this RTV will set up completely nice and strong. Everything's working. About the only thing that I had to note was on this stud, my insert actually, the JB weld didn't hold, so the stud started free spinning. I just had to grab onto it with some vice grips and use a wrench to tighten that nut down. So ideally that actually pulled that insert in that hole tighter, so maybe this will come off better if I ever have to take this off. Ideally that doesn't have to happen, but we'll see what happens. Looking at some pictures of this carburetor, I do notice basically every single one has a nipple into this hole. So I'm wondering if that was part of my issue when I first got this engine with the same carburetor. It was always revving high. So I'm wondering if I just had a massive vacuum leak here and didn't know it because there's no port there. But we'll figure that out. Got a little bit more stuff to get before we're running, but it's coming together. It's looking good.